Did a racehorse and Sir Alex Ferguson lead to the Glazers both owning and destroying Manchester United? It's one of the most debated stories in football history. Some people say that Sir Alex Ferguson's feud over a racehorse led directly to the Glazer ownership of the club, costing United its independence. Others say it's nonsense. What is the truth? Today I'm going to try and break it down. I'm going to look at the case for Ferguson being responsible, the case against it, and then maybe the bigger picture that made United vulnerable a long time before the Glazers arrived. Now, Sir Alex wasn't just a football manager. He was deeply passionate about horse racing. In the late 90s, he became friends with John Magnier and JP McManus, two Irish billionaires, who also happened to be United's biggest shareholders. Magnier was one of the most powerful figures in horse racing. He owned the Coolmore Stud, which was one of the largest breeding operations in the world. Ferguson and Magnier were close, and they owned several horses together. One of those horses happened to be the Rock of Gibraltar. Initially, Ferguson believed he had an agreement where he'd share in the stallion's breeding rights, something that would later become worth over £100 million. The Rock of Gibraltar went on to win 7 consecutive Group 1 races, making him one of the greatest racehorses of his generation. And this all started in 2001. In April 2001, he wins his first major race. By October 2001, he starts the 7-race winning streak. And by October 2002, his final victory, he retires to stud. Magnier denied that Ferguson had any claim to the horse's breeding. Ferguson believed he had a verbal agreement, and he took legal action. That was an unprecedented move. One of the most powerful men in football, suing one of United's biggest shareholders. Magnier and McManus fought back, not just in court, but against Ferguson's entire position at the football club. With their relationship with Ferguson shattered, Magnier and McManus decided to cash out. They sold their 28.7% stake in Manchester United to Malcolm Glazer, handing him the leverage he needed to complete a hostile takeover. But is that all there is to it? He fell out with them, they sold. No. Now, Malcolm Glazer, back in March 2003, first started buying shares in the club. 2.9% was what he went with. By September of 2003, he increased that to 3.17%. By October 2004, he reached a 28.1% stake, where he was very close to having control. By May 2005, he established full control after reaching 75+% of the club. Now, Malcolm Glazer started buying those shares all the way back in 2003, which is actually before the Rock of Gibraltar lawsuit even exploded. United had been a publicly traded company since 1991, which meant anybody could buy shares and a takeover was always a possibility. To really understand why the Glazers could take over the club, you got to go all the way back to 1998 and see when Rupert Murdoch's BSkyB tried to buy the club and actually had an agreement in place before it was stopped by both fan protests and government intervention. The fans revolted. There was protests, there was campaigns, and the bid was ultimately blocked by the UK Monopoly and Mergers Commission. United stayed independent for now. But the fact that a media giant like Murdoch almost taken over proved that United were always going to be vulnerable to a hostile buyout. Now, did Ferguson's lawsuit help accelerate the Glazer takeover? It probably did. It created a bit of turmoil at the club. It forced Magnier and McManus to sell their shares quicker than they probably would have done, even though I think they probably would have sold regardless anyway. And it distracted the board from preventing the takeover. Was it the root cause of the takeover the way the anti-United media are trying to make it out? No. United's PLC status meant that this could always happen. It literally happened with BSkyB, and it was only the government intervening, which they didn't do this time around, and they could have done. Meant it didn't go through. The Glazers were already planning a takeover of Manchester United before the lawsuit. I'll say it again. The Glazers' intention was to always come in and buy Manchester United. That was happening regardless of the lawsuit. Magnier and McManus were always going to sell at the right price. They were investors. They had no desire to own the club outright. The real blame lies in United's failure to protect itself from the corporate raiders. The truth is, Ferguson's lawsuit probably did accelerate them, but United's fate was sealed years earlier when it became a PLC. The Glazers were coming one way or another. it just feels like it's a easy target for people who don't want to drill down into it or have some nuanced thinking. Oh, Fergie fell out with them and they owned us and they sold us, so obviously it was Fergie's fault. I certainly don't think it helped. But the Glazers were coming anyway. You know, that was in motion before he decided to put a lawsuit in. Not an ideal situation, but far from the Fergie caused this shit argument that I'm seeing flung around all over the place. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on that. Did you know all of that? Have you seen the 99 questions? Because there's some interesting questions in that document. I'll see you in the next one. Laters. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, five-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.